Welcome to class pre-cal students here on Wednesday the 28th. Hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully you've recovered from the test you took on Monday, and hopefully you've listened to Tuesday's material and you're all caught up. Let's see, announcements. Let's see, there'll be a quiz this Friday, so keep that in mind. You'll do that quiz over the weekend. Make sure you're ready for it. On Thursday, I will give you more information on what will be on that quiz. Hopefully this time I'll get it right, unlike the last time. And be working on your homework integrity sheets. If you've lost a sheet I gave you, just make up your own. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If there's 15 problems, you write down how many out of 15 you did. 14 out of 15, 15 out of 15, etc. I would hope it would be 100s every time. And I hope that you're not getting behind on your homework. Let's see. Chase, don't want to embarrass you, but don't forget, Mr. Eves, you owe me a test by Wednesday. Contact me and let me know when it's finished, please. You other three young men, I've just about got your tests. They're all marked. Your tests are marked. Just about basically graded. The quizzes I'll be finishing tonight. And do remember, I do homeschool 3 boys, so it's not like I sit around and do nothing. I do have a lot to do. And I think what I'm going to do, I'm not going to promise, but I think I'm going to get those to you either. Corey, I'm not sure how far you live from my house. Maybe shoot me off an email and tell me if you live 5 minutes, 10, 15. I know where Chase is close, Caleb's close, and Matthew's close. I could drive these tests and quizzes to your house and then do an individual video for each of you to watch, like one for Corey, one for Caleb, one for Chase, one for Matthew, going over your test and your quiz. That's going to be a lot of work. I'm probably going a little above and beyond what I have to do, but I want to make sure you're finding your mistakes. So, and some of you were lost on the factoring. I'm really worried about that. That's fundamental. I mean, you cannot go on in pre-cal if you don't know the factoring. So make sure you're really getting a grip on that. Okay. All right, let's roll. I want to warn you right now, today's lesson is going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be long, and the homework's going to be long. It's 10 problems. Tonight's homework is 10, and I expect you to do it and work hard, but I am balanced. Thursday's video is going to be about this topic right here, linear equations, and you study those in 8th grade math, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. They're very basic equations, something like this. 2x plus 5 equals 3 parentheses x minus 2, something like that. We're going to review those on Thursday, so even though today's lesson is very difficult and very long, and it might even take you a couple hours to do the lesson and the video or the homework, remember tomorrow, I don't think I'm going to give you homework tomorrow. I think I'm just going to give you, or I'm just going to, the notes and homework are all going to be together. We're just going to work a bunch of problems together, and that'll be it. Then Friday, we're going to look at quadratic equations, and then that's it for the review chapter. And on Monday, we start with trigonometry. So, well, actually, there's no class Monday. Don't forget that. How exciting is that? I can hear you guys cheering all the way to my house right now. Monday is Labor Day. So no videos on Monday, no class on Monday. So yay, yeehaw. That's good. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'm going to go fast like usual. And that is as soon as I grab a quick drink of water here. I'm going to go fast and pause the video if you need to. Yesterday we looked at multiplying and dividing rational expressions. Today we're looking at adding and subtracting rational expressions. Lesson R.5, and the date, if you want to keep track of that, today is 8/28. 8/28. Adding and subtracting rational expressions. Now I want to give you some steps. I forget if it's 3 or 4. I think it's 4 steps. I want to give you these steps. You're going to have to write quickly, probably pause the video to be honest with you, but that's okay. Here we go. We're going to be adding and subtracting rational expressions. Now the first thing you need to do is you factor the denominators. That can be factored. Some can be factored, some cannot. Do you know why we factor the denominators and we don't care about the numerators? I'll tell you why. Thanks for asking. I'm glad you asked. Here's why. Because when you're adding and subtracting fractions, unlike multiplication and division, do you remember from elementary school what you have to get? You have to get a common denominator. And so in order to get a common denominator, we're going to have to first factor the denominators. Next, we are going to step 2, you find a common denominator. I will teach you how to do that. But when you find a common denominator, notice you always compare monomials with monomials. Monomials are one-termers. Binomials with binomials, trinomials with trinomials, etc., etc. And I will teach you how to do that, okay? Step 3, now that you have found a common denominator from step 2, rewrite all of your fractions using this new common denominator. You know what I mean? If you had 1/2 plus 1/3 plus 5/6, remember how a common denominator for 2, 3, and 6 would be 6? And remember how you go through and change all your fractions? Well, this one wouldn't change, would it? Because 5/6 is still 5/6. But this would change. 3 goes into 6, 2. 2 times 1 is 2, so 1/3 became 2/6. 1/2 would become 3/6. Well, that's what we're going to do in step 3, only we're going to use variables in algebra. So once you have found the common denominator, like down here, a 6, a 6, and a 6, that's real good, huh? 6, 6, 6. Anyways, rewrite all of your fractions using this new common denominator, okay? And I'm going to teach you how to do that, all right? So these are just steps that I want you to write down and have beside you as we do the problems in your notes today, and as you do the problems in your homework, you should have these 4 steps off to the side. Step 4, combine your fractions and simplify the numerator. So here we go. Factor all denominators, find your common denominator, rewrite all of your fractions using the new common denominator, combine your fractions, and simplify the numerators. And with that in mind, because you're on the edge of your seat with excitement, we are going to look today at 4 problems. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's your homework. So that gives you some closure on what we're looking at today. All right, let's add these 2 rational expressions together. Step 1 that I gave you, and by the way, you should have these steps written down now. They should be right beside you as you do this problem. Go ahead and look at your notes. Step 1 says factor all the denominators that can be factored. Well, 2x minus 2, I'm pretty sure that can be factored. We can at least pull out what's common, so I'm going to pull out a 2, and you're left with x minus 1. Now, can you factor this binomial any further? Well, I do not know the square root or the cube root of those 2 terms, so I cannot factor it anymore. So I'm going to take this up here, and I have factored the denominator. Now let's go ahead and see if we can't factor this denominator right here. And I thought that might happen. Let me grab that 2 and bring it down. Okay, let's factor this trinomial. First of all, I have nothing common I can factor out. So I have a trinomial with a lead coefficient of 1. I multiply this times this, and I write it right over here. I am going fast. I love all you students. I care about you, but if you don't know how to factor by now, you're going to have to go back and watch the videos or call me or get some help or something, okay? Because we really have spent a lot of time on the factoring, okay? So 2 times 1 is 2. And now list out all the factors of 2. The factors you would want would be -1 and -2. When you multiply those, you get 2. When you combine those, you get -3. So remember what to do. We bring down our 2x squared, and then for the -3x, we write that as 2 terms. We put a -1x and a -2x. Then we bring down this last term, +1. Pull out what's common in the first 2. That would be an x, and you're left with x minus 1. Nothing common here to pull out, so you pull out a 1, and there's a negative sign here, so whenever there's a negative sign there, remember you always pull out a negative sign and put it there, always. So put a negative sign here. Now, we'll be left over with x minus 1. -1 times x. I apologize, that's wrong, and this is wrong over here too, and I'm sorry, we all make mistakes. There should be a 2 right here, and I'm sorry. X times 2x is 2x squared. I'm very sorry, this should be a 2 also. I apologize. So -1 times 2x is -2x. -1 times -1 is +1. So with that in mind, it looks like, it looks like my factorization would be 2x minus 1, and then x minus 1. So 2x minus 1, x minus 1 is your factorization. So let's pull that up here, and now step 1 is done. Now you can see how long these problems are going to be, okay? It's going to be a long day today, but tomorrow's going to be a lot easier, trust me. So step 1, factor the denominators. Now step 2, get a common denominator. And students, here's where it gets really, really, really tough, okay? So please watch. I'm going to write my common denominator down here. Now if you'll look at your notes, notice in step 2 it says when you're finding a common denominator, compare monomials with monomials. binomials, the binomials, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So watch carefully. It's going to be really hard to understand, so pay attention. Let's start off with, I'm going to go ahead and put little letters. This parentheses here is a binomial, put a B, that's a binomial. This is 2 terms, that's a binomial. This is 2 terms, that's a binomial. See this 2 outside here, it's all by itself, that's a monomial. That's a 1-termer, it's all by itself. If that was an X right there, I would call it a monomial. It's 1 term, all by itself on the outside. Okay, so let's start with our monomials. Pretend there was a 4 right here to compare with this 2. Do you see what I'm saying? Pretend there was a 4 here. What's a common denominator for 4 and 2? You should know from many years ago. What number does 4 and 2 both go into evenly? The smallest number possible. Well, 4. Now, we don't have a 4 here, so let me erase that, but I'm just saying pretend we did. Now, what we do have is a 2 here. And if you want to put a 1 here, you're welcome to. I don't think that's necessary, but you're welcome to. So we have a 2 here, no monomial over here, so part of my common denominator is going to be a 2 because I have no other monomial to compare it with. Okay? So if I have nothing to compare it with, then I've got to use that in my common denominator. Now let's look at your binomials. Here's a 2x minus 1. How many groups of 2x minus 1 do you have? Well, if I had a little 2 right here, then I would say I had 2 groups. If I had a little 3 here, I would say I had 3 groups. But I don't have a 2, I don't have a 3. So how many groups of 2x minus 1 do I have? Well, I have 1 group. How many groups of 2x minus 1 do I have over here? None. So which one of these has the most? This one. And how many groups does it have? 1. So I'm going to put 2x minus 1. Now, by the way, this should be Greek to you. You should be a little confused. You should be scratching your head. And if you're not, be thankful. Most students do. And just trust me, you're going to have to do these 4 problems in your notes. You're going to have to do your 10 problems in homework. And if you choose not to, then you're going to be confused. But the more of these you do, and I'll walk you through them step by step, the easier it gets. But you're going to have to just listen over and over and over, okay? Now, I took care of that binomial, and I didn't mean to do that. So let's back that up. And now let's get rid of the B like this. All right, very good. Now, I have how many groups of x plus 1 here? 1 group. How many groups of x plus 1 over here? 1 group. Which denominator has the most? Well, they both have just 1. So neither one has the most, so we're just going to put 1. They both have 1. There we go. All right. So now we have the common denominator issue taken care of, I hope. So I have found my common denominator. I've compared all the monomials with the monomials. I've compared all the binomials with the binomials, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to go ahead and put a fraction bar here, and I'm going to put my common denominator. All right. Let me go like that. Let's save a little bit of time here, and let's get fancy if we can, please. There we go. And let's get 2 of these. So, and I did not want to do that, and I have totally messed things up. Let's see if I can ungroup. All right, that's not going to work. I apologize, students. And there we go. There we go. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, so there's our common denominator. Notice I wrote it twice. Why'd you write it twice, Mr. Hart? Well, because I have 2 fractions, right? I have 2 fractions. There we go. Now watch what I do. Watch what I do, okay? I have an x squared minus 4x plus 4. So I bring that down. Do you see that okay? Bring your whole numerator down. Mr. Earhart, what step are we on? We're on step number 3. Rewrite all of your fractions with this new common denominator. Now, what did you write extra here that you don't have here? Look it over carefully. Well, I've got an x minus 1, an x minus 1, 2x minus 1, 2x minus 1. Oh, I see it. Look, I've got an extra 2 down here, an extra 2 right here. See it? That I did not have here. So I've got to put a 2 up here to balance this out. Now let's come over here. What do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, let's see, I've got a 2 right here, and I've got a 2 here, so that's fine. I've got a 2x, I've got an x minus 1 and an x minus 1, so that's good. Oh, but look, I've got a 2x minus 1 that I don't have here, so I've got to write 1 up top to balance it out. And then don't forget, remember how we brought our numerator down? Well, you got to do the same thing here. You got to bring your numerator down, and when you do, you got to put parentheses around it, okay? It's the whole numerator coming down together as a group. Wow, this is a lot of work, isn't it? I told you it was. Now, we have rewritten. This is our new fraction. This is our new fraction. By the way, if you were to reduce this fraction, cross off your 2's, you'd be left with what you started with. And if you crossed this off and crossed this off, you'd be left with what you started with right up here. So we've not changed the value of the fractions at all. We just rewrote them. And now that I have a common denominator, watch what I do. I'm going to write this common denominator. I'm going to write this common denominator right there. And now, this is the killer, I'm going to put all of this together. So I've got 2, see this 2 right here? 2 parentheses, x squared minus 4x plus 4, close your parentheses, plus x plus 4, 2x minus 1. And unfortunately for you, we're not even close to being done. So here we go. I'm going to copy this and take it onto the next page. And let's go ahead and continue. Mr. Earhart, how do you know you're not done? We'll look at step 4. Combine your fractions. We just did that. We put them together and simplify the numerators. So here we go. We've got to simplify the numerator. So what I have up top right here, see this 2? You multiply the 2 through the parentheses. That 2 is right outside the parentheses. I would have 2x squared minus 8x plus 8. And then you must multiply these two parentheses together. So x times x times negative 1. That would give you positive 2x squared, negative 1x. And then take this 4 and multiply those together. 4 times 2x and 4 times negative 1. That's a positive 8x. And that's a negative 4. Now, what I've taught my students in the past, feel free, instead of writing this denominator over and over, I just put CD for common denominator, okay? And now we're ready for our final answer. I have a 2x squared and a 2x squared. That would give me a 4x squared. They're like terms. I have negative 8x, negative 1x, and positive 8x. If you take a negative 1 and a negative 8 and a negative 1, that's negative 9 plus 8, you get a negative 1x. So I combined all of my x terms together. Then a positive 8 and a negative 4 would give you a positive 4. And I have told my students, in your final answer, I do want you to write the denominator. Don't just put CD in your final answer, okay? Please don't do that. Go ahead and write the whole denominator out. There we go. Wow. A lot of fun? No. But very important as we get into some deeper pre-cal when it comes to being able to find common denominators and simplifying rational expressions. All right, let's continue on now and take a look at the next problem. Okay, step 1 says to factor the denominators as far as they can go. And I only see 2 denominators, so I'm going to pull one down here, and I'm going to pull the other one right down here. And these should be pretty easy to factor. Notice they have all lead coefficients of 1. So for this one here, what 2 numbers multiplied together give me 30, when added together give me 6? Well, a positive 5 and a positive 6. So the factorization would be x plus 5, x plus 6. Now students, that is pretty easy. If you studied your factoring, that's not too difficult, okay? So I'm going to pull that up here. Now let's come over to this trinomial right here. What 2 numbers multiplied together would give me 20, when added together would give me 9. I'm thinking 4 and 5. Positive 4 and a positive 5. Yep, so we would have x plus 4 and x plus 5. All right, there we go. 4 times 5 is 20, and 4 plus 5 is 9. So grab this. Did not mean to do that. And did not mean to do that. Third try is a charm. There we go. And now we have factored our denominators. That's step 1. Now step 2 says find a common denominator. So here we go. Time to find a common denominator. So remember what I taught you. You compare monomials with monomials, bis with bis. This is a binomial. This is a binomial. This is a binomial. This is a binomial. Okay, let's start with the x plus 5. How many groups of x plus 5 do I have? One group. How many groups of x plus 5 do I have? One group. Which denominator has the most? Well, they both have just one, so one is sufficient. That's totally fine. Look, students, if I would have had a 2 right here, like this, then I would say, okay, I have one group of x plus 5 here, two groups over here. Which denominator has the most? This denominator has the most. How many does it have? 2. So I'd put a 2 right there. But that's not happened yet, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, I probably shouldn't cross them off. I'm not going to cross them off. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll erase the b's. That's what I'll do. So I'm done with that binomial, and I'm done with this binomial. All right, now let's take a look at x plus 6. How many groups of x plus 6? 1. How many groups of x plus 6? None. Which denominator has the most? This one does. And how many does it have? 1. So I'm going to put 1 x plus 6. If I needed two groups, I'd put a little 2 right there, okay? But I don't. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that b, and now the last binomial is x plus 4. How many groups of x plus 4 over here? None. How many groups of x plus 4 over here? 1. Which denominator has the most? This one does. So I put 1 x plus 4. And now, if you'll notice, all of my b's are gone. I've compared all my binomials with the binomials. There are no monomials or trinomials, so I have found my common denominator. Step 3 says, now that you have found your common denominator, rewrite all of your fractions. So we're going to rewrite all of our fractions. Let me copy this real quick. All right, now let's grab one of them, pull one of them here. And let's grab this one and pull it up here, if I'm able to do that without messing up, which usually it takes me only 17 tries. There we go. All right, now I did 2 because I have 2 fractions, so like that, put a little minus sign here, and go like this. Now remember what to do. You say to yourself, self, first of all, bring the numerator down. So I'm going to bring that x down. I'm going to put it right here. Then you say to yourself, what do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, I've got an x plus 5, x plus 5, x plus 6. I've got an x plus 4 right here that's not here. So I've got to put one up top to balance out the fraction. Now, see this 5? Bring it down. And when you bring that 5 down, you're good there. Now, let's check the denominator. What do you have extra here that you don't have here? Well, it looks like to me it's an x plus 6. So you've got to write an x plus 6 up here to balance the fraction. Now this minus sign is going to cause some problems there, so be really careful. First thing we're going to do is we're going to now combine our fractions and then simplify. So I'm going to go ahead and just use my shortcut I told you you're allowed to use, which is CD. So I'm going to put CD for my common denominator. Notice you don't do anything with that. It's just the top. I would have x plus 4, and then a minus sign, so minus, and then 5, x plus 6. Okay, now we've got to still simplify that numerator and get that down to where it's simplified. Let me get a new page up here. And here we go. Let's continue. So we're still on step 3, I believe. No, I'm sorry, step 4. We've combined our fractions. Now we're going to simplify the numerator. So let's simplify the numerator. I have an x outside this parentheses. I'm going to multiply through. So x times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. Now be careful, you do not have a 5. This is a negative 5, and yes, that came from right here. When you combined your two fractions, brought that negative sign down, it's right here. That negative does go for this whole fraction, so it's a negative 5, okay? So negative 5 times x and negative 5 times 6. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x, and negative 5 times 6 is a negative 30, all over your common denominator. Now here's your final answer, x squared, and then you have a positive 4 and a negative 5. They're both x's, so you combine them. That's a negative 1x, and then a negative 30, and then I would like you to always write your common denominator, and that is what? 5, 6, and 4 it looks like, so we'll put that right here. X plus 5, x plus 4, x plus 6. And you do not need to simplify your denominator. If the book does, just ignore that. I have no problem with you leaving your answers like that, okay? Hey, 2 down and 2 to go. So hang in there. Then you are going to have 10 homework problems. It is going to take a while. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be fun. But tomorrow will be a lot easier. A lot easier, okay? Let's move on to the next problem. Now I know when you look at this problem, you're like, Mr. Earhart needs to get some medication and settle down here. He's crazy. Guys, this is not as bad as it looks, okay? It's really not. Look, let me explain it to you like this, okay? You have two fractions up top. So let me go to my handy dandy reveal button here. There. Now look, forget the bottom for a second. If I just simply asked you to put these two fractions together, you could find a common denominator for a and b and put those two fractions together, and then you would have one fraction up top here, right? You could do that. You really could. And then you would have one fraction up top, like something here and something here, and then think about it. Then you take these two fractions here and you put them together, and I'll teach you how to do that, and then you have a fraction here. Because you've taken two fractions and put them together, you have one fraction. So it's really not, in my opinion, of course I'm probably, I had a lot of this stuff, but it's not that hard, okay? So let's go ahead and work with these two fractions here. Is that okay with you guys? Totally forget this for just a second, please. Totally forget those two fractions. Let's look at just the top. So I have 1 over a plus 1 over b. Now, step one, if we're going to combine these two fractions, factor your denominators. Obviously, you can't factor a and you can't factor b. Step two, find a common denominator. Okay, this is a monomial. This is a monomial. This is so easy. How many a's do I have here? 1. How many a's do I have over here? None. Which group has the most a's? This one. It has 1, so I'm going to put 1a. Now, erase that m. We're done with that m. Now look at the b. Look at the b. How many b's do I have here? 1. How many b's over here? None. Which denominator has the most b's? This one. How many does it have? 1. So I'm going to erase my m, and I'm going to put a b down here. So there, you found your common denominator, ab. It's that easy. So your common denominator is ab. So if my common denominator is ab, I'm going to put an ab here, and a plus sign, and an ab here. Now, remember what to do. Whatever's up top, you bring it down, so put a 1. What do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, I've got an a and a, I've got an extra b, so put a b up top to balance the fraction. Now, bring down what you have up top. It's a 1, so put a 1. What do you have extra here that you don't have here? Well, it would be an a, so put an a up top to balance out the fraction. And now you're ready. 1b is the same thing as b, and 1a is the same thing as a, so b plus a. So my new fraction up top is b plus a. Do you see that? b plus a all over, what's your common denominator? ab. There. Now put your real long fraction bar. So you took these two fractions and you put them together into one. It's not that bad. It's really not. Okay, those that have passed out, grab your smelling salts and revive, and let's keep going. Now let's take a look at these two fractions here. 1 over a cubed plus 1 over b cubed. Not that hard. Look, we got to get a common denominator. Can you factor this denominator? No. Can you factor this denominator? No. So let's compare monomials with monomials. How many a's do I have here? 3. How many a's over here? None. Which denominator has the most? This one. How many does it have? 3. So I'm going to write a to the third. I'm done with this monomial. All right, now let's look at this one. I have 3 b's here, no b's here. Which denominator has the most? This one. How many does it have? 3. So b to the third. Now I'm done with that monomial. So there, I found my common denominator. My common denominator is a cubed, b cubed. So I'm going to write a cubed, b cubed. I'm going to write it again because I have two fractions, a cubed, b cubed. Put a fraction bar, put a fraction bar, put a plus sign. Now, whatever you have up top, you always bring it down. Whatever you have up top, you always bring it down. Very good. What do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, it looks like to me I have an extra b cubed, so I write that in the top. What do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, it looks like to me I have an extra a cubed, so I'm going to write an a cubed in the top. There. Now, 1b cubed is the same thing as b cubed. 1a cubed is the same thing as a cubed. So here's what I have. I have b cubed plus a cubed all over a cubed b cubed. You took these two fractions right here and you put them together into one fraction. We're going to practice more of these, contain your excitement. All right. Now, Mr. Earhart, why do we do all of that? Thanks for asking. I'm glad you asked that question. If I had 3/4 over, I don't know, 5/6, that really means what? It means 3/4 divided by, see that big fraction bar right there? It means divide. So 3/4 divided by what? 5/6. And if I have 3/4 divided by 5/6, that's the same thing as 3/4 times, remember you flip your second fraction, 3/4 times 6/5. And then you go ahead and multiply and you would get 18 over 20, you'd have to reduce and you would get 9/10. So this whole thing right here would break down to this over here. Well, let's apply that same principle to this problem right here. We have one fraction up top, so I'm going to go ahead and write b plus a all over ab, there's my one fraction, divided by b cubed plus a cubed all over a cubed b cubed, right? Sure. This top fraction here divided by this bottom fraction right here. So sure, that's exactly what we have. And now don't forget, when we're dividing fractions, and by the way, you're about ready to pull your hair out. I know these are long, but you know what? We learned this on Monday. We learned this on Monday, okay? Or excuse me, sorry, you were here at my house Monday. Tuesday, we learned how to divide rational expressions. Remember, the first thing you do is you factor everything that can be factored. Well, this can't be factored, this can't be factored, this can't be factored. However, this can be factored. So now that we're dividing these two fractions, you've got to factor this. Notice it's a binomial. I do know the cube root of this. I do know the cube root of that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it and I'm going to drag it because I don't like it. I want to get rid of it. There we go. And now that I've done that, I know how to factor. I have perfect cubes, so I put a little parentheses, then a big parentheses. The cube root of b cubed is b. The cube root of a cubed is a. Bring down this plus sign. You take this term here and multiply it by itself. B times b is b squared. You take this term and this term, multiply them together. B times a would be ab, or ba. Then you take this term right here, you multiply it by itself. A times a is a squared. Whenever this is positive, then it goes positive, negative, positive over here. So we're going to grab this wonderful looking factorization and we're going to drag it right up there to where this right here used to be, and now it's gone. Now we're, wow, this is great. Not really. Now we're ready to what? What are we doing to these two fractions? Dividing. So that means we really should flip the second fraction and multiply. So make that a multiplication symbol. And let's grab this bottom part right here. And let's drag that up top. And let's grab this top part. And we're going to pull it right down here. And we're going to drag this right here. And now we're ready to roll. Let's do some canceling. See this b plus a? Cross that off and put a 1 and cross off your b plus a. This is a one-termer and this is a one-termer, so we can definitely do some canceling there. So here we go. We have 1a here and 3a's here. We're going to take 1a away and take 1a away. We're left with a squared. We have 1b here. We have 3b's here. Take 1b away. Take 1b away, and you're left with b squared. Nothing left here, so I put a 1. 1 times a squared. Here's a 1 right here. 1 times a squared b squared is a squared b squared. And then 1 times this trinomial here, 1 times this would simply be b squared minus ab plus a squared. Wow, that's a record, and now we're getting into some good stuff, okay? That's how you do those. I've only given you 52 of those on your homework. Of course, I'm kidding, but that's a pretty tough problem, and you've definitely earned your math skills today. That's a tough problem. One more and we're done. One more and we're finally done. And really, believe me, guys, I wouldn't say this is a whole lot harder. It's just combine. It might even be a little easier. Get common denominators and go from there. So let's go ahead and get this done, and we're finished with the video finally. Okay, students, I have two fractions right here, and I want to put them together. I want to combine them. So I just taught you how to do that. Let's go ahead and practice some more. We're going to combine or subtract two fractions, factor the denominators. You cannot factor them, so step 2, find your common denominator. This is a monomial and a monomial. How many x's do I have here? 2. How many x's over here? None. Which group has the most? This one. It has 2. So I'm done with my x squared. Go ahead and cross that off. And now let's take a look at my y squared. How many y squares do I have over here? 2. How many y squares over here? None. Which denominator has the most? This one does, and it has 2. So x squared, y squared. And now I can get rid of this m right there. So there, I found my common denominator, x squared, y squared. So I may as well go ahead and write it twice because I have two fractions, x squared, y squared. Bring down your minus sign. All right, see this 1 up top? Put a 1 here. See this 1 up top? Put a 1 here. Always learn to bring down your numerator. Even if it's a 1, bring it down just to be safe. Now, what do I have extra here that I don't have here? Well, it looks like a y squared. So I'm going to write a y squared up top to balance the fraction. What do I have extra here that I don't have here? It looks like an x squared. So I'm going to put an x squared up top to balance the fraction. And now 1y squared is the same thing as y squared. 1x squared is the same thing as x squared. So what I have up top now is y squared minus x squared all over x squared y squared, and then put your really long fraction bar. So what I did, students, is I took these two fractions that were right up here. See these two fractions right here? I took those two fractions and I combined them by getting a common denominator because they were subtracting. I got a common denominator, put them together, and now I have this over here. Now let's try the same thing with these three fractions down here. And just because it's three fractions doesn't mean it'll be any harder. I think it'll be just the same because we're dealing with monomials, and I don't think it'll be that difficult, to be honest with you. All right, here we go. Let's get started. We're going to combine all of these fractions, adding and subtracting. Step 1. If you'll look at your notes there, is to factor the denominators. Well, none of these denominators can be factored, so forget that. Step 2 is find your common denominator. This is a monomial. Please don't call this a binomial. If there was a plus sign here or a minus sign, then we would have a binomial. They're multiplying. It's one term, so we have a monomial and a monomial. All right, let's look at our x's. How many x's do you have here? 2. How many x's here? 1. How many x's here? None. Which denominator has the most x's? This one, and it has 2. So x squared. I'm going to go ahead and erase this m. And now we'll continue on. Now there's no need, of course, to look at this x right here. We already took care of the x, so now we're looking at the y's. I have 1y here, I have 2 y's here. Which group has the most, or which denominator? There's no y's over here. Which denominator has the most? This one does. And how many does it have? 2. So I'm going to put 2 y's. So there we have successfully found our common denominator. Get rid of this m. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and write this x squared y squared 3 times. Why do I write it 3 times? Because we have 3 fractions. So it makes total sense to me to write it 3 times. Now, remember you always bring your numerators down. So bring down a 1, here's a 2, bring down a 2, here's a 1, bring down your 1. Now, what do you have extra here that you don't have here? Well, it looks like a y squared to me, so we're going to put a y squared up top to balance the fraction. Now be careful on this one. Be careful, be careful. What do you have extra here that you don't have here? Well, I've got 1 extra x. There's 2 x's here and 1 x here, so 1 extra x. There's 2 y's here and 1 y here, so 1 extra y. So I have 1 extra x and 1 extra y. So I've got to put an x and a y up top to balance the fraction. And then what do you have extra here that you don't have here? Well, it looks like an x squared to me. So I'm going to put an x squared up top to balance the excuse me, to balance the fraction. Now I'm going to go ahead and put all of these together. Before I do that, I'm going to get a little space. I'm going to grab this and drag it back over here where it was. And now we're going to put all of these fractions together. So 1y squared is the same thing as y squared. Then you have a minus sign, so minus what? 2xy, and then plus what? Plus, well, 1x squared is the same thing as x squared. And then all over your common denominator, which is x squared y squared. Cool. Very cool. So now you've taken these three fractions here and you've put them all together in one big fraction. All right, so I would like to say that we're done, but you know it just can't be that easy. Now we have a fraction over a fraction. Remember what we do when we have a fraction over a fraction? That's basically taking a fraction and dividing it. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this top fraction here, which is y squared minus x squared, all over x squared y squared, and we're going to put divided by, because this big long bar here means divide, divided by this fraction, which is y squared minus 2xy plus x squared, all over x squared y squared. How many have a headache? Probably all of you. Now I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I don't want that there any longer. I'm going to drag this up top so I've got some room to work. Too bad you can't do all this in your notebook paper, huh? It'd be nice. All right, now we've learned how to divide fractions. We learned that on Monday or on Tuesday. Remember, the first thing you do is you factor everything the best you can. See this y squared minus x squared? Students, I really want to get to the point where we can just do this quickly. We should. It's not fair to the students who have done their work and learned it, okay? So I'm going to go really fast on this. We know the square root of both of those, so you put two little parentheses. The square root of y squared is y, so we put a y and a y. The square root of x squared is x, so we put an x into x, make one positive, make one negative, and there we have taken this denominator, or this numerator, excuse me, and we have totally factored it, so it goes right here, and now we can get rid of this. Now let's take this. You can't factor, I mean, look, this is a one-termer. You can't factor this. You can't factor this. If there's a minus sign there, you could. If there's a minus sign there, we could, but we don't have two terms. We have a monomial and a monomial. Now, you can factor this, definitely. So let's go ahead and take a look at that, okay? Notice there's nothing common you can factor out. However, we have a trinomial with a lead coefficient of 1. What's your number here, or what's your coefficient here? Coefficient here, 1. So we're going to list out the factors of 1. That'd be 1. Actually, it would be a negative 1 and a negative 1, because if you multiply a negative 1 times a negative 1, you will get a positive 1. And if you combine those, you'll get a negative 2. So now be careful when you write the factorization. Please watch carefully. You have a y squared here, so it's y, and you're used to putting y minus 1, y minus 1. And that's fine, but notice you're also used to having just a number here, and we don't just have a number here, we also have x squared. So not only do you put negative 1, you also put an x and a x like this. So that's the factorization. You really don't need those 1's in front of the x's, but you're welcome to have those. So I just factored the numerator into that right there. Now, remember what to do next? We are dividing fractions, so technically we want to make this multiplication. So it's multiplication, and I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to yank it down to the bottom. I'm going to grab this right here, and we're going to pull it up top. And there, we have basically flipped the fraction. And now you're ready to cancel. Look at this. X squared, y squared, x squared, y squared. All that's gone, put a 1. All of that's gone, put a 1. Y plus x, y minus x, okay? Y minus x, y minus x. Nothing else you can do now. So y plus x times 1. Y plus x times 1 would be y plus x up top, and then 1 times y minus x would be y minus x. That's your answer. Please don't start crossing those off. You cannot do that because you have a binomial over a binomial. Now, if this is y minus x, then you could cancel the whole top with the whole bottom, but that's not the case. We don't have that. And with that in mind, I'm sure you're about ready to die, but I told you I'm balanced. On Thursday, it's going to be really, really, really easy. It's stuff from middle school and Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. This is very difficult stuff. I realize that. I have given you 10 problems. Would you please listen to me while I talk to you for a second? Students, if you don't get anything else that I say, please get this, okay? It's every other odd, EOO. That means you do 33. And then you skip 35, and you do 37, and you skip 39, and you do 41, and you skip 43, and you do 45. You want an easier way? You just add 4. Do 33, add 4. Do 37, add 4. Do 41, add 4. Do 45, add 4. Do 49, add 4. Do 53. And if you do that correctly, see this number right here? You will end up on 69 on the end if you do it correctly, okay? So first of all, if you don't catch that, you're going to be doing a lot more problems than you need to. Every other odd. Number 2, if you don't check your answers in the back of the book, that makes no sense to me. I don't get that. You could be doing every problem wrong. You'd have no idea. Oh, I'm done with my homework. Yeah, you're done, and you might not have done it correctly. Please check your answers in the back of the book. And then watch the help video. And some of you might be so lost right now, you might need to sit down and watch the entire help video and do all 10 problems with me. That's not fun, but again, tomorrow is going to be a lot easier, and so you might have to do that. Do whatever it takes to understand this stuff. This will be on your quiz this Friday, okay? All right, that is it for today.